Hi everyone, I'm Erin Autin, Director of Research Programs at Zpryme, and I'm here with my colleague Emma Garcia, our Director of People and Culture at Zpryme, and our friend Kate Carmichael, who is a family and child therapist here in Austin, Texas. Thank you for joining us, Kate.
Thanks for having me.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you do in your therapy practice?
Yeah, I work with kids and their families, and I also do some couples work. I'm trying to help relationships during the adolescent years. So I do a lot of work with identity development and the developmental stage of adolescence. So this has been a really interesting time, going through this and seeing it from their eyes and from the eyes of all the families out there, worried and concerned and dealing with this in all kinds of ways, some healthy, some not so healthy. And so just trying to support them along the way, find ways of managing it.
So you've moved your business to teletherapy. How has that gone so far? Was it an easy transition? Have people kept their appointments, or are people dropping off?
I would say one of the biggest challenges is people don't want to be overheard. So they struggle being able to share as openly as possible. Therapy works best when people can speak as authentically and openly and not have to filter anything. And so I think the fear of being heard has been a real struggle. So people will go on walks or go out to their car as a way of getting out of the house so that they can have a private space. That's been probably one of my biggest struggles with telehealth.
So Emma, as you trying to give support to a company of 20 people and now having to do that completely remotely, how has that been sort of challenging or not challenging for you?
Well, I mean, I just have to preface it saying that we've been a distributed team, and so remote work isn't that new for us, right? That being said, here in Austin, there's a core group that would get together a couple times a week and see each other. And so what I've been encouraging the team to do is to take our team calls using a platform like the one that we're using for this call, so that we can see each other's faces, because you're able to key in on body language and really see how people are doing. Not everyone is comfortable sharing or voicing the struggle that they might be experiencing. But when you see, hair's not been brushed for a while and bags under your eyes, and it's like that, you need to reach out to someone and make sure they're okay, and offer help and support in any way that you can. And sometimes that's people reaching out to me. So we're all just trying to support one another, and it helps when you can see each other in this virtual way. It's an extra layer of connection.
Mm-hmm.
Kate, you work mostly with teens and college students, so it must be really difficult for people of that age, maybe even more difficult than what the rest of us are going through. What are some of the most common concerns or fears that you're hearing from your clients?
I think the biggest struggle is the same thing everybody has of all ages that come to therapy, is just feeling misunderstood and minimized. I think their parents are like, oh, what's the big deal? This would be like over the summer. I mean, you would be dealing with the same things, and I don't understand. And I mean, that probably comes from, as parents, we don't understand what's happening either. This is an interesting time as far as everybody's processing this globally at the same time. And so I think we're trying our best to help people that we love, but sometimes it's possible to be too helpful and to try to fix or resolve rather than just acknowledge. So I think, as Emma was just talking about, people a lot of times just want to be seen and acknowledged, and to be told, yeah, this is disruptive. Your whole life has been flipped upside down. Everything that you knew to be true has been taken from you. So, you know, their whole lives they've known going to school every day. That's my reality. It happens no matter what. And then that's been taken away. So, but I think everybody has a form of that reality that has been disrupted, and different people have different ways of managing that. So I would say that's the biggest struggle, is just feeling like almost foggy. You know, I think as people are trying to process this, they don't quite have a mental map of what to make of it. And that won't happen for a couple of weeks. I think people are still processing it out.
Mm-hmm.
So you see a lot of people will either overfunction, which means they'll prepare, get everything they need from the grocery store, get everything, you know, off the shelves, or people will underfunction and they'll say, oh, it's no big deal. I'm just going to carry on with my life as I usually would and be unsafe and go out to restaurants or do all the things that I used to do.
Talking earlier, and you mentioned just sort of this feeling of uncertainty that not just who's feeling, but you know, everyone is feeling. So what are some ways to sort of deal with that feeling of uncertainty?
First thing we have to think about is our brains. So your brain wants to create neural pathways to understand its surroundings and its environment, which is great because then it can make shortcuts. So that's your brain's way of handling all the information that's constantly coming in. So what will happen is you will create a cognitive map when we're going through periods of transition or adjustments. So when you think about the first time you learned to drive a car, it was much more overwhelming than the 100th time you drove a car. That's because your brain developed a mental map of put on a seatbelt, check the mirrors. So it became much more natural. So right now what we're seeing is people are trying to understand and adjust to a new normal. And so what you'll see is a confusion. You'll see people that are much more irritated than they normally would be, particularly with the technology. So there's going to be a ton of technical things that are happening, just like my screen cut out for a minute. And so there's almost this feeling of like more irritated than you would normally be. What will happen eventually is your brain will create a map of its routine. And so you will develop a deeper rhythm and understanding of how your day will start to function in this new environment. And so once that happens, it becomes more comfortable. One thing that's amazing about human beings is the ability to adjust to environments. So you see this in all kinds of research. People actually are really good at adjusting into different situations given time. So I think this will be an interesting conversation to revisit in 3 weeks, you know, as this goes on. And the problem is we don't know how long this is going to go on for. But I guarantee people out there, you guys are going to feel differently in 2 or 3 weeks from now than you do right now as your brain continues to develop the neural pathways to understand what's happening.
Emma, did you have?
That's kind of what I was where I was going. I would imagine that some people are naturally more resilient than others, can adjust and pivot quickly, while others have more of a challenge with that. So are there tools that you're helping your clients to develop a mental map quickly, or is that, can you prepare to develop a mental map, or does that just happen organically?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not somebody that loves change, so I totally relate to people that are irritated more, or, you know, trying to grapple with all of this. So I think it's a great time to talk about how we all adjust to change. And one of the things to think about is we all have different threat responses when we are feeling overwhelmed. And so you think about fight, flight, or freeze. That's our body's ways of managing stress. So people that are fight are going to over-prepare or over-function. They can get almost obsessive, making sure everybody has what they need. They may get angrier or just more worked up. So that's just how their body's primed. People that are flight may underfunction And so they may just have a harder time getting up out of bed. They may notice that they can't get to the computer. They're really dragging. It's hard to stay motivated. It's hard to perform in the way they used to. And then freeze is a tendency to dissociate. So that'll be, you are really looking at your phone more. You're really checking the news more. And that's your brain's way of trying to, or, you know, maybe not in the news, but reality TV, it's like you are trying to find ways to shut down. So it's helpful to know yourself and to figure out, how do you respond in times of threat to your system. That way we can find ways to manage it. So when you see those, what I recommend people doing is that we all have kind of our tells. So for me, when I notice myself like watching the Kardashians like crazy, or all my reality TV shows, or, you know, I have certain cues to where I can see, okay, I am feeling stressed. And then we create coping mechanisms to manage those. But so I think the most important thing is to think about, what are your tells?
I don't think I've ever FaceTimed with my sister, and I've been FaceTiming with my sister. And I'm wondering, though, how is this way of connecting, what are the potential, like, ramifications for connecting when we come through this? Like, how will it change, do you think, the way that we interact with one another moving forward? Acquire less physical presence with each other and just kind of make this the new normal? Do you talk about that with your
Yeah.
do you find anyone feeling concerned about that?
Yeah, I think it becomes difficult to be authentic sometimes. So it's hard to share real feelings sometimes on a screen or through social media. So the more you can take risks, the more you can be honest about where you are, the more you can ask for support or for what you need, the better those platforms are going to work once you reunite with people in real time. But that's a challenging in any relationship, you know, regardless of whatever medium you're using, to try to be as authentic and open as you can. So I would encourage people to try that, you know, to try to talk about what they're really needing right now. Yeah, my concern honestly is more the tendency to isolate, and I can definitely fall into that. That's why I created that group for our book club. Is like, my tendency is actually the opposite, where I will just sort of shut myself off and want to read my books. And so I think for people that can be a bit introverted, that's what I worry about, is that, sure, for the first few weeks we put ourselves out there and it feels awkward, and we get on these platforms and we share things with our friends. After 4 or 5, 6 weeks of that, I think you're going to see people really fighting the urge to isolate away. That is a concern for sure. I mean, because it's hard. It's going to take a little bit more effort to do something like this and to connect with people than it might be to go meet someone for coffee. It's just like that little bit of a step that some people might just say, like, I would rather just stay at home and work and not reach out. And so that, I think, is going to be tough.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely takes a lot more work. You know, I had to find a quiet space
Yeah.
where I don't have a 3-year-old barging into the room, and he was barging into the room, and my bed was made. It's not made anymore because the 3-year-old came barging in the room, and you know, so I can see wanting to give up on connecting in this way because it's hard, and you don't want people to see all the mess behind you. I mean, thank God there's backgrounds that you can put on your screen.
Yeah.
I haven't figured out how to do, but yeah, I agree that like, how sustainable is this? Because it is exhausting on so many levels to try to hold up a certain impression, I guess, or present a certain impression to people that are coming into your home.
So that sort of brings me to my last question for both of you. Kate, you especially have this job where all day, every day, you're expected to empathize with people and sort of take on their fears and anxieties and problems. So how can you balance self-care right now and still care for yourself on top of, other people in this heightened anxiety situation that we're in?
Oh, it's interesting that you say that, because I was just talking to my consultation group I'm in a group with a bunch of other therapists where we support each other. And we were talking about how, we're not as filled up by our work as we usually are. Usually when we meet with clients in person, it's very satisfying and fulfilling, and I feel very close to them. And we were talking about how different it is to adjust to staring at a screen all day. And I'm sure a lot of people are feeling that way. So for me, I have to really be aware of that, because if I let myself get to a burnout place, and what we call compassion fatigue, which is where you've just taken it on, and then I just hit a wall. So part of my job is to be very aware along the way. And so I'm always checking in with myself and my consultation group too about where am I? So I think I've had to be pretty good about picking up on my cues of when I'm about to hit a wall. Mm-hmm. But you don't get there until you've hit it. So I think for a lot of people, you have to take that chance or take that risk to find out where your limits are. So yeah. I don't know, that's not like a great answer to your question, but I think we're all trying to figure that out. I would be curious, Emma, if you have any ways of managing that as well.
Yeah, I shared some steps with the whole LinkedIn world I'm connected to last Friday, because I had a pretty bad day on Thursday. I've mentioned this to Erin, that I don't generally drink a glass of wine a night, and I find myself drinking like 2 glasses of wine a night.
Yes,
at least. Sometimes
yes, yeah.
And last Thursday, I think it was Thursday, it was just a rough day, and I was running down the street, chasing after my 3 and 4-year-old who were headed straight for my neighbor's mailbox, and they were in their little ride-on Jeep. They hit the mailbox, and I'm barefoot and like crazy person running down the street yelling at the top of my lungs. And I apologized to my neighbor because I was yelling and looked crazy. And I thought later, as I was reflecting on like what time out, what is happening, what went wrong, where did I like lose track of who I am and how I normally respond to situations like that. And it was just like these essential practices that if I don't do them, they're just basic practices that are nourishing. And if I don't do them, and if I don't do enough of them in a morning routine, I'm going to look like a crazy person. With the, like, normally I think I can handle these levels of stress. Even if I don't do these regular practices, I can have like enough reserve to where I'm not like completely tapped, but now I can't do that. I can't let 2 days go by without doing some essential practices. And for me, that looks like a meditation in the morning, based on gratitude. What am I grateful for? A yoga practice, brushing my hair, putting lotion on my face, putting a little bit of something on my face to make my skin glow, so that when I walk by and I see my reflection, I don't feel like crap.
Right.
So, I mean, that's what's helping me, and that's what I'm encouraging people to do, is just like do these nourishing practices. You have to do them more than ever before.
Yeah, and Kate, I think what you said about just checking in with yourself, I think that's really good advice just for anybody in general, because it's really hard to remember to do that. I mean, I think we all all three are yoga practitioners, so it's
Mm-hmm.
a little bit more in the front of our minds. But I find myself, if I'm not practicing yoga regularly, I'll completely forget to be present. So that's really good advice.
And try to, it's like, I've been thinking about, this will end. This will come to an end. And so one of the things that I've done and I'm encouraging people to do is to write yourself a letter post-pandemic about how proud you are of the way you handled this. And you handled this with so much love. And you were such a great role model for your friends and your family and your children. And they saw you managing stress and being honest about it. So I really encourage people, the benefit of that is it provides you with what your challenges are. So in the letter, you can say, these were the challenges, and then this is what you did to help meet them. Because a lot of times we know what our challenges are. We know why it's hard to maintain healthy habits. So what did you do as a way of countering that? And so I'm encouraging people to write themselves a letter, because also to remember this will come to an end. And so we're going to look back on this really big moment in the life of the world. And so I think that will help also just kind of memorialize that this moment that we're all going through. So it'll be interesting to look back on this. We should do this a year from now, the same conversation, and reflect.
Where are they now?
Where are we? Erin, Kate, and Emma. Where are they now? Are they still practicing yoga?
All right. We're putting it on the calendar 1 year from today.
It'll be interesting to reflect on this.
Yeah.
April 2021. Feels like a million years from now.
Well, thank you so much for talking with us today. I think you've given us some really helpful tips, and it's been really great hearing about your work. So really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. This was fun.
Yeah, thank you, Kate. We'll grab that coffee soon.
I know. I'm excited to touch you. Is that weird?
All right. Thanks.
Okay, bye guys.
Bye.
Bye.